hello, hello. Hi. Hello. Wait, let me sort out my mic. There we go. How is everybody? Hello. Welcome in, pals. Welcome in. Thanks for turning up to the stream. Let me turn myself up a little bit. There we go. That should be good. Let me know if my mic's too quiet. I turned it down because my friends in Discord said I was loud, so I've turned it down.
Legal.
What did you say?
I said illegal.
Illegal, not
Illegal.
allowed, never too loud. Well, hello, friends. Welcome to the second stream of the Disability Pride Month that I'm doing, not obviously like ever. So, thank you so much for hanging out and turning up and being all lively in chat. It's very nice to see. So, hello to everybody. I am here with some wonderful people today to discuss like physical accessibility for events and gaming events, and also accessibility in games. So I would like to introduce you guys to Revia, to Laura, to Kolo, and to Stacy, who are all wonderful. And yeah, so I just want to thank you all for being here today. And I want to give all these lovely people a chance to introduce themselves. So Stacey, if you want to start off introducing yourself and where people can find you and what you do and all that jazz.
Sure. Hopefully everyone can hear me okay. Let me know and I'll just talk louder. Hi everybody. My name's Stacey. I am the accessibility design specialist for the Ubisoft Paris studio, which means I get to work with everyone at the studio to help make our games more accessible to more people. I worked a little bit on Mario plus Rabbids Sparks of Hope, Just Dance, and I'm currently working on some unannounced things too. Prior to that, I was a game accessibility consultant and a content creator for many years. I'm also disabled, which means I have my own accessibility needs myself, mostly related to my chronic pain and linked to cognitive accessibility too. You can find me online as Hello Stacey. Most places. Hello Stacey, as if it's on my gravestone.
That's such a good way to remember it.
Every time I have to explain it, I'm like, I chose well.
As if I was deceased, yes.
As if I was deceased. So yeah, thanks for having me.
No, thanks for being here. Kolo, if you want to introduce yourself, where people can find you, your stuff, all that kind of jazz, go for it.
Sure. Hi, I'm Kolo. And you can find me on the internet under the handle Hello, it's Kolo. And it's really funny whenever I introduce myself to people because I'm always like, hi, I'm Kolo. And they're like, what's your username? And I'm like, hello, it's Kolo. And they're like, no, what's your username? It's really awkward. I picked well too. I am a content creator, streamer, and I also am a consultant with brands talking about influencer relations. I primarily stream on Twitch. You can also find me on YouTube. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram and TikTok and all of those places. There seems to be a new one every week. I really like plants and I really like sci-fi and I like games that make me feel things. And I'm also disabled. I have a form of inflammatory arthritis, which affects my back and my hands and is one of the reasons that I play games using my feet.
Amazing. And Laura, what about you?
Hi, I'm Laura. I go by Laura K. Buzz all across the internet. I am a content creator, Twitch streamer. I do all sorts of things. I do consulting for video game developers about accessibility, and I produce a weekly series on YouTube called Accessibility, in which I give sort of very entry-level discussions of accessibility broadly across the industry to try and educate people on the breadth of topics that accessibility can cover. Beyond that, I am myself disabled. I have a whole cocktail of things going on, including autism, ADHD, dyspraxia, aphantasia, which is a fun one. I have no visual memory, all sorts of things that make it difficult for me to do video games sometimes. So I spend my time trying to make video games better so that I can play them now and continue to play them in the future.
Love that. And the lovely Arevia, if you want to tell everybody about what you do and where they can find you.
Yes. No, I'm going to say no now. I don't want to know.
I
No,
don't
thank
feel
you.
like it actually.
I don't want to know. Hi everyone, my name is Arevia and I'm a disabled and chronically ill content creator from Norway. So if I say something wrong, we're going to blame that. I am a Twitch streamer and I also I call it like bite-sizable content about accessibility on like TikTok and Instagram. So it like easy to digest and understand. And I also try to do some reviews on YouTube. I also do accessibility advocacy and public speaking. I travel around, actually now international, which is really, really fun, talking about the fact that I am born with something called cerebral palsy, which is a small brain injury, which is really mild for my case. And my parents were told to not tell me. So I grew up until I was like 13 to something around there, not knowing that I had a brain injury. So gaming for me was my first meeting ever with the feeling of empowerment and the feeling of like mastering something for the first time without a set of rules and a set of levels I needed to hit as a child that I was never born to be able to hit. And now as I'm older, I have PTSD and arthritis, rheumatism arthritis. So yeah, I'll make a content about that.
Love that. And I'm LittleMoTAC. You can find me LittleMoTAC everywhere, except for Twitter where I have an underscore because 19-year-old me stole LittleMoTAC from me and I can't remember the login to change it. So that's me. I exist and play games. That's me. Okay, so before we do anything else, before we get into the questions and chats and stuff, I want to thank our wonderful, wonderful sponsors for this stream, Elgato and Splash Damage. Elgato makes some really cool hardware that are really handy if you're like getting into content creation or just want really good stuff to play games with, like good mics and good cameras and stuff. And then Splash Damage, which are a game development company who make a lot of multiplayer games. They worked on like a lot of everybody's favorite titles, and now they're making their own titles, which is very cool. So thank you to our sponsors. Very grateful. It's very wonderful that people want to get involved with Disability Pride Month, so I'm very thankful. And so yeah, thank you. And thank you all for being here again. I really appreciate it. And now that the introductions are out of the way, we will dive into the chats and the questions and gain some knowledge. And so the first thing I sort of want to discuss is like physical accessibility at events, like whether that be PR events, gaming conventions, board game conventions, anything like that. And I want to start with that because that's basically like where my most experience lies in terms of like I have a physical disability, so walking is hard a lot of the time. And so the first thing I want to ask you guys is if you have any ideas for if there's any companies out there listening or hosting events, how do you believe that accessibility for disabled people of all kinds, whether it be physical disability and neurodivergence, how could events be made more accessible for them?
I'll jump in with something. I sometimes find that a lot of video game events that are set up, like press events and things like that, preview events, often have seating is only really available when you're going to sit at a station to play a video game.
Mm-hmm.
And this is one of the most frustrating things I come across is there is plenty of seating available, but no, we have to do the hour and a half of milling around socializing in which it would be rude to go and sit down because that's the area for the video games.
Yes.
I've taken to I have a bit of an issue with a knee from an injury maybe a decade ago. And I've started just bringing a collapsible chair with me to events and not caring if I come across as rude when I unfold a chair.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, if you haven't prepared the option to sit down that isn't because I'm playing your video game right now, I'm going to do it myself because it is important to recognize not everyone can stand at all moments.
Yes. Agree.
Yeah, if I could just piggyback off that, I think that was also one of my points too. So one of my disabilities is that I have POTS, postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome, which means I can't stand for long periods of time. I faint, which isn't really optimal when you're attending an event by yourself, which I had to do a lot of the time. And yeah, because a lot of events are just kind of set up with, you know, there'll be maybe tables, but there'll be like those really tall tables where you're meant to just stand around and you're meant to, you know, network and chat, which is great. But that was often something that just was so frustrating. And I think queuing as well is one thing. Actually, Molly and I were meant to attend an event that I will not name some time ago, where I was emailing and I was trying to get some information on whether they'll be queuing. I let them know that I couldn't stand for long periods of time, and you know, would there maybe be a separate queue that I could go into? Maybe I could sit somewhere and wait. I don't mind waiting for an hour. I just have to sit somewhere. And no one got back to me. We turned up at the event. There were about 200 people in the queue. So I was like, there's absolutely no way that I can join that queue. I couldn't even get to the front to try and like find someone to ask because it was so crowded. And in the end, I had a meltdown, and Molly and I went to drink tea, and then we went home. And I think that kind of really highlights how important it is to tell people about the accessibility at your event, to have that information readily available, to communicate it to people. And I think something that I've found quite a lot as well was that sometimes the person who was inviting me wouldn't be the person with the info. So they'd have to go away and ask someone else. And then, you know, it'll take them quite some time to come back to you. And then when they do come back to you, it's often like secondhand information. So sometimes there's miscommunication and stuff like that. So just telling people about the accessibility at the event is really, really crucial. And giving the info to people without them having to ask for it, because then you're saving everyone a bunch of time. Really. And it can be very scary as a disabled person trying to attend an event and to have a situation like that where actually you've had to travel all the way there, have a meltdown, and go home. So that's something that I struggle with quite a lot when I was creating content and attending events a lot, was just people not knowing or people not having the information. And it can be very, very frustrating. And I'm sure that all of us have examples of events where our needs haven't really been catered to, or information hasn't really been readily available.
One really quick suggestion I'd love to throw in that I think event organizers could really learn from is the idea of virtual queuing. Get an estimate of what your current queue length wait time is, and if someone comes up and says, I struggle with queuing, go, cool, here is a piece of paper. It says, come back at the amount of time you would have had to queue for. We will just slot you in. It is such a simple solution that like doesn't come across as asking to skip the queue or just sort of jump ahead, but accommodates, hey, look, I need to go sit down. Can I come back when I would have reached the front of the queue?
That's really smart. Yeah. And I think also, if you have guests or somebody speaking for you or a part of like the guests that's going to be at the event, make sure that like often you have like a green room or a quiet room where the guests can like go back and sit down, and make sure if you have disabled, chronically ill people working for you, to that be available from the start. I have experienced like where say Saturday and Sunday, it's like the main event, but you have to be there Friday, or there is something there Friday evening, then understand that some people need that space. And if you can't accommodate that, let them know. Because I often need a quiet place. I need to lie down. If I get too much pain, I need to sit down, and I need to sit down now. So then I can maybe wait until the next day and then communicate that instead of coming there and not knowing what to do, which stresses everybody out. And it's also, as Stacey said, the person who is there to say welcome to you is most likely not the same person you have been speaking to. They are stressed. So make these plans or ask before the event starts. A lot of disabled people know themselves what they need. But of course, if you're new to it space, it can be really hard to know it without actually being there and realizing, I should have asked for something. And now it's embarrassing to ask, but you just, sadly have to learn.
I think communication is the biggest one that I would say in terms of advice, because it's in an ideal world, your event would be accessible, regardless of what options you have it's fantastic to be able to communicate them really accurately and with confidence before the event. Because if there's an event that may or may not be accessible to me, I would really like to know ahead, like, hey, is there so I'm an ambulatory wheelchair user, which is quite a new thing for me. So I'm kind of remapping everywhere I know with, like, is there a curb drop there? Is there a place there? Like, is there a disabled bathroom where I can get my wheelchair in? Is there, if we're going to have to stand up and there's going to be like a big standing event, not only is there seating for those who need it, but also can I get through? Because if everybody's standing in front of me, I'm not going to be able to see anything.
Yeah.
So, and I think all of these things, yes, it's about considering all of these things, but it's also communicating it, whether you have it or not. And yes, please have it, please have it. But if you don't, please communicate it and communicate it with confidence. Because one thing that I really struggle with is when there is an event and somebody says, oh yeah, that should be fine. And I go,
should be or is fine.
Because what I want to do is I want to get there. I want to absolutely smash it. I want to be engaged with the event. I want to like enjoy it. I want to have fun. I want to meet people. I want to make some absolutely banging content about it. Like I really want to be there and I want to be present. And I think the way that accessibility is handled and communicated can really change that. And I think to be able to include disabled people and to include all people in your events and in your content, it's got to be really well communicated. So I would say as well, please have as many options as you can. We've known some of them already, but for those that you don't have, it's just as important to communicate that. So if you have wheelchair access, but there's no disabled bathroom that's big enough to get a wheelchair in, please make sure that's communicated. And I think the same thing that everybody said now, like usually the person that you're talking to isn't the person who has been on site at the event or has done those. So I would say if you are somebody who's creating an event or if you're working on behalf of an event, try and have that conversation as soon as you can and just say, hey, like, what are the options? And do it very realistically, as in, yes, okay, we can do this, we can't do this. And it sucks to be excluded. It really sucks to be excluded. It sucks when there's not wheelchair access. It sucks when there's no seating access. And that is something that I think all of us are just going, please include us. But, like, I know personally, I would much rather you tell me up front, hey, we can't make this accessible, than say, oh, I'm sure it would be fine. And then we find out, like Stacey or Molly did and find out that unfortunately it's not something we can engage in, because we just want to do a great job for you. We want to be there and smash it.
To chime in on what you were saying there, it is so important to be open about if your event isn't going to be accessible, because if I know that in advance, I can come up with my own accommodations to make do.
Yes.
If
Or,
I
like,
know
prepare
what
your
to
brain.
accommodate, I can do the best I can to manage with that. And even just from the perspective of as someone autistic, it's so useful to know what is and is not sorted. To have that information up front makes everything else I'm going to have to sort so much less stressful.
Yes, agree. I think I went to I won't say where because I'm still under contract. But I mean, if anybody follows me on social media, you could probably work out where I went to an event a few weeks ago. It was like an opening of a gaming space. And one of the things they were pitching in the PR email was, this place is accessible for everybody. And I was
think
like,
I can guess exactly where.
And I was like, interesting, love that, but also do I? And I had to email back and ask, what does that mean? Like, what is that? What does that mean?
Accessible means nothing by itself.
Yeah, and so their version of accessible that they gave me was that they had like a lift for wheelchair users, and the lights were dimmable. That was for sensory issues. I think that was it. And I was like, interesting. And it is what you were saying, where like, if it's not accessible, just don't say it is. Like, this company would have looked so much better in my eyes had they not said anything about accessibility, because like, the bar's on the floor already. Like, you're raising it, just don't. So like, it is that thing of like, it is just as important to say what isn't going to be okay for people as it is. Like, are there going to be chairs? Are there not going to be chairs? Like, if there's not chairs, like for instance, if you are ambulatory but you use a wheelchair, you can decide whether to use your wheelchair or a walking aid that day. Like, it is true that saying what you don't have is just as good.
And I think it's also important for event planners to understand that if it is a full weekend or a full week in that
Yes.
matter of things, as a disabled person, we need to pick and choose. We don't have the freedom. A lot of us don't have the freedom to press ourselves or like say like, okay, but this week I'm just going to go for do everything and then relax on Monday. That isn't a privilege we have. So rather say to us, this event, this dinner, this party, whatever, this is not going to be accessible, because then I'm going to just like, okay, I'm going to chill at my hotel room, reading a book, chilling, like saving my energy, and then I'm ready to go tomorrow. I sadly am used to like half my life I've been excluded. I'm used to it. I can deal with that. But the annoyance of using energy to a place where I just have to fight the people going there because I can't enter or I can't be a part of it is worse than just the initial reaction of you can't come because it's not accessible. Of course, in a wishy world, everything should be accessible, but in reality, it's not, especially a lot in kind of places in Europe. Sadly, it just isn't. So just be upfront and honest.
Yeah. And trust disabled creators when they tell you their limitations and what they, what they need. I've been to events where, there have been dinners that like I'm supposed to go to, and I've looked the place up in advance and gone, look, I have sensory issues with food. I know I'm not going to be able to eat anything here. I know it seems impolite. Can I just go and sort myself something, because I know that I am not going to be able to eat anything here? And they've gone, yeah, but we'd really like you to come for the social aspect. And then I've had to be like, I didn't order anything because I told you in advance.
Yeah.
Like, just that they were like, oh, we assumed you'd find something you could have, and it's like, no, I told you my limits up front, and you didn't take them seriously. It's like, trust that people like. I'm never excited to tell someone I have a limitation and can't do something they expect of me at an event. Please trust that if I've done that, it's because that is a limit and I recognize it in myself, and I know it better than you probably.
I think also when I know certainly when I ask for something to be accessible or ask is something accessible, I quite often find myself feeling like a bit uncomfortable, like, oh, like how is this going to be perceived, or how is this going to be taken? And I think like one thing that I would say to people who are organizing events or brands, companies, I would say like if we come back to it, like it doesn't come from a place of awkwardness, like it comes from a place of like, we really want to be there, like please help us be there. So if you hear us speaking with like the passion and the like, or you get that in an email, like it comes from a place of us being like really excited, or certainly for me, like really excited and really wanting to be involved, not in a place of like accusatory, like it's like we really want to be there.
It is.
I just have one more thing before we move on, if that's okay. And that's just because I think we haven't touched on it, that if you do have an event in which there are gameplay demos to play, for example, then you also need to think about the physical setup of those demos. So having adjustable seating, for example, it's not accessible if you can't fit a wheelchair under the table, for example. Having a variety of, adaptive controllers, different peripherals, that really is crucial for a lot of players. I know it's some companies are doing it really, really well, and having that information available in advance. I know it's usually part of the planning very early on for Ubisoft Forward. I know Microsoft do a really, really great job of it at, events like Gamescom and stuff like that. But yeah, having that available is really useful. And also, Colo, I know you've mentioned it in the past, like knowing if there's going to be controller remapping, and just having the little bits of info that we can have in advance is really, really useful for players to figure out if they can attend, if they can play the demo.
I was at an event recently where I went to LA. It was pretty cool. I went to go and play The Expanse. Telltale threw me out there, which was amazing. And I never thought that long distance travel would be accessible to me, but they made it work, which was amazing. And we talked a lot about controllers because it was a hands-on preview. And I said, hey, like, here's the deal. They were like, can we provide it for you? Like, how do we make this work? So I flew my adaptive controller out there. But the thing about like asking chairs, because I can't be on a wheelie chair. I'm on a wheelie chair here, but it's because it's on carpet, so it doesn't slide backwards when I use my feet. But if it's a wheelie chair that's then on like a solid surface, and I'm trying to like play games with my feet, that gets tricky. So yeah, and like ask, I'd say that as well. Like ask questions as long as they're not super intrusive. Like, hey, what does work? Like, yeah.
And I feel like if you're inviting a disabled content creator to your event, you should kind of know that hey, it might be good to ask. And I think we touched on it a little bit, but it can be really uncomfortable and really scary to have to ask for things, and it doesn't feel good. So being the person on the other end to be like, okay, we've invited this disabled content creator, maybe they have accessibility needs, I'm just going to ask straight up. It's really powerful, and it makes the person feel like you're on their side. And that you care.
In general, just like if you work, just ask anyone, because like like if you look at me and look at my social media, you wouldn't, like, if you don't read that I say I'm disabled content creator, you wouldn't know, because I have only my invisible disabilities. So ask. People know themselves, and it's some people get a bit like afraid of like, but what if people are lying? And the fact is that is so weird. Like, that is incredible weird that somebody is lying about it.
Just casually ask everyone, do you have any accessibility needs? It's such a basic question that like that no one is here to try and sneak things out of, like, oh, I'm going to use a controller I don't normally use, that will get them.
And like, people know themselves, and most likely you're just going to make people really, really happy and feel welcome and feel seen, maybe for the first time. So you can get like that really golden star from people going like, oh, this event, I love it because they thought about me.
I think, like, or even like including big events, like if you're thinking like EGX, MCM, like anything like that, even if they just include, well, they might do, I don't know, but I've never seen it, if they include like at the bottom, like, if you have any accessibility needs, email this place or go to this webpage, and they'll have all the information, because a barrier in itself to having your needs met is having to ask for it and having to go through all these hoops to even get there.
I will say for EGX and MCM, which are run by the same group, in theory, they have that contact. In practice, it's not enough to say, contact this place if you have accessibility needs. You have to then follow up with those people's needs.
Agree.
I have also had email this email address for accessibility info, and that inbox just been like no one's managing that inbox, no one's replying. It's just like your email just goes into the
space. One thing I also wanted to add, which I talk about this a lot, I don't know why I'm so fixated on this, but I just think that I feel like this would help a whole bunch of people, not just disabled people, would be offering travel bursaries, or if you're like inviting content creators to your events, covering their travel. Because I've been to so few PR events where companies will cover travel. Like, I think like 10% do. And for instance, if you're disabled, your travel is probably going to work out more expensive because you might need to get an Uber or a taxi instead of a tube, or not all tube stations are accessible for wheelchair users, so you might have to travel further. And also intersectionally, for people that live further away from London where all the events happen, their travel is going to be more expensive, so you're closing off options for people traveling further. You're also closing off options for people that can't afford to travel to London or can't afford to travel within London. And so I'm just a big fan of a travel bursary, and I think more companies should cover travel.
I would love to tack onto this very quickly, and this is important for any kind of marginalized group, including disabled people. If you require someone if you have a travel bursary, but you require someone to book their travel and accommodation themselves out of their own money upfront and be reimbursed later, that very much disadvantages people who may not have the on-hand cash to do that. Like, people who are financially limited cannot always afford to have 3 or 4 weeks running up to and then waiting to get paid after the event, not having access to that, even if ultimately it'll even out.
Yes, 100%. It is just something I wish more companies did, especially like, I'm speaking personally as like a content creator. It just sucks, like seeing people that have to travel from like Wales or Manchester to London for events, and are having to pay like 80 to £100 for their travel each time. So that means that anyone like outside the general London area can't attend these events, is at a disadvantage for doing content, and just doesn't get to join in.
I would note really quickly on that. During COVID, we saw a lot of companies doing press events via a program called Parsec that allowed you to remotely control a computer somewhere else to remotely do press events, and that completely stopped as sort of COVID alertness wound down. That is something that we could be offering for a lot of press events: the ability to remote into a computer with the acknowledgement of there may be some lag and therefore your experience may not be 100% perfect. But for a lot of games, you could open accessibility, you could open up disabled creator access to these events remotely. And it really sucks that we don't do that more often as an option.
Yeah.
Like the Able Gamers, they had a gala where they had like an online gala, and it was really, really cool. It shows that it is possible to do things like this, and you could like network online. Or Game Accessibility Conference, who had like hybrid of like both in London but also online. Because it is sad, but it is a fact that a lot of disabled people live in poverty. We are a big represented in a group of people who live in poverty. It is a lot more expensive, even from if you live in countries where your healthcare is like your government pays for your healthcare. It's still a lot of extra things. Like we often cannot work as many hours. Often it's hard for us to just take on, like when I do work for people, I need a longer deadline than a lot of other people. So I miss on a lot of things because I can't just jump around and do things. And even though a lot of things is covered by the government, there is a lot of health things that aren't covered. Like just like if you need compression gloves, Xbox adaptive controller, all of these things, food, all of these things aren't covered, and they make so that we have so much more extra expenses. So just like for me, I can't just travel to, like, I wish I could just travel to TwitchCon, but it's a big expense that I then need to wait for months to get paid down, and that can be scary.
Being
I think,
disabled is expensive.
I can't remember the exact number, but it is somewhere around, in the UK at least, it costs somewhere around £400 to £500 a month extra just to be disabled because of all the extra costs. So that's something that I don't think a lot of non-disabled people or people that don't have disabled people in their life that don't realize that how much more expensive it is to just exist as a disabled person.
And with events as well, and expense, it can also be a huge barrier. Can be booking care to come with you if you're somebody who needs a carer, to be able to find somebody who's available, and to be able to have a medical paid carer as well, if that's something that you need, to be able to do that, and then also find transport and also do all of those things, is definitely a barrier. And so with that, if there is the ability to have a +1 as a carer, because sometimes these events are so super limited, and I understand, we can only cater, or the venue can only cater for X amount, but if there isn't the ability to bring a carer or to bring somebody else, then that does become a potential barrier as well. And also just I'll go quickly loop back to talk about the Xbox event, but I can do. Shall I do that after?
I just wanted to say one thing, because I just read Rue's message that they said Scope's most recent survey showed it's an extra £945 a month now in the UK.
Wow.
Opened.
For sure.
And if there's 2 disabled adults in a household, it's £1,248 a month.
That's
ridiculous.
So bonkers.
It's ridiculous.
And also, if you're not disabled, like a lot of us get disability benefits, but like for me, starting my process until I got my disability benefits, which is the lowest I can get because I couldn't start working. So in Norway, it's accumulated out for how much you had in salary before when you could work. I've been disabled my whole life. I could never work, but I'm not disabled enough to get like you're too disabled kind of extra pay. And from I started the thing until I got it took 7 years.
Yeah.
7 years I didn't have that extra income that is the disability benefits, which is 7 years of extremely little income. I was lucky enough to have really helpful and supportive family, but that is a privilege and a massive privilege. And yeah,
it is. It is expensive. I'm actually not to plug, but the last the last stream of Disability Pride Month will be on the cost of being disabled. So if anybody wants to hear more about that, there's a
Look
whole
at that.
stream on it.
Segue.
Segue to 2 weeks
Yes.
time. But Kola, you had something to say about the event?
Yeah, so I met Molly at the expo at the watch party for the Xbox showcase and the Starfield Direct. Was it last month? Must have been last month.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
I want
Yeah.
to say.
And it's the first time that I've ever been to an event and seen the Xbox Adaptive Controller out.
Mm-hmm.
And not only was it out, it was there. There were 2 of them at a low table where you could like access it. There were loads of different switches. There were like different, and they were all labeled. It wasn't just like a mess of wires. And I was so excited. I was like, oh my God, I have never seen this. I was like, I was absolutely buzzing. I like text everybody I know. I was like, oh my God. It was amazing. And I was so like blown away by it. But this was at the Microsoft Experience Center in London. And like it was just normal for them. And I was like, yes. And it's like the little things like that. And I think it's even if it's something that I see in an event that I know is an accessibility thing that I don't need personally, for me, I'm like, yes, we're invited. Like when a brand uses alt text or something like
Mm-hmm.
that's not specifically for me. That's not an accessibility feature that I need, but that still says from that brand, like, hey, we care.
Yeah.
Like we're
Mhm.
thinking about this. We're thinking about our accessibility,
Agree.
which is pretty damn sweet.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to
and
say that because that was a great event. Never seen that before.
and also I was on a Pride event, has nothing to do with accessibility or gaming, and they had some interpretator. Is that what we call
Yeah,
it?
yeah.
It's hard. That is a hard word. On stage, like right beside the person who's speaking, and I ended up like sending out like a message to everybody I know. I put it on Instagram, and like when you are accessible, people like it just gets like talked about.
Yeah, it spreads.
It spreads, and like so that because I didn't need it, but I just saw it, and all like the gang I was with, everybody was just like, "Oh my God, this is so cool! This is how it should be. Why doesn't everything in the city like things in the cities that happen have this?"
Yes.
And we all got really happy, and we all tweeted and posted a picture of it. So yeah, do it. People care, and people spread it, and yeah.
Yeah, I agree. This is, I don't want to go off on a tangent too much, but this is in terms of like stuff like that. Razer, the like hardware company Razer, a few months ago they made a tweet. There was like a meme going around Twitter where it was like a white screen and it was like an arrow being like click here, and it was like the alt text button, and it would be like not all, like it wouldn't be like descriptive text, it would be like a little funny meme or a little joke, and like they never addressed it, never said anything, never were like, oh sorry, that was maybe a miss. But then I think it was literally yesterday or the day before they tweeted at the Wobbly Gamer,
wasn't it?
Yeah, who I believe had asked them like, hey, you could definitely do better with this, and they tweeted at him like under a meme they'd posted with the correct like descriptive text being like, is this any good, is this better? And he was like, yes. And I was like, okay, we're 180ing here. That's and it is just like, it's so easy to just not make disabled people feel like shit, honestly.
And like learning as well. Like I have to say, so much of this I had absolutely no idea before I was disabled. Like I had no idea about like the vast majority of what we're talking about. I think I would also say like it's not only is it okay to like ask if you don't understand something, be aware of like intrusive questions, and that not everybody will want to share their full context, their full medical history, or feel that they have the availability to talk about it. But I like it's okay to learn, it's okay to change your content or change your event or change the way you tweet or change the way you the words you use. Like it's okay to be like, oh hey, like we've learned something new, now we're going to do this instead. Like that's awesome. More of that. Love
Agreed.
that.
Moving away from the like physical event side of things, I want to switch to games themselves and like accessibility features in games, accessibility in games. And so I wanted to ask you all like if there is a game that comes to mind that like when you saw their accessibility options or they announced their accessibility options, you were like, oh my god, this is the shit, this is amazing. Like I know like God of War, Last of Us, like big ones that stick out for me where like there was so much news around them when they came out, awards, in terms of like non-AAA games. Also Interior Nights, I think it's As Dusk Falls, won a bunch of awards for their accessibility stuff. So I don't know if you guys had any games to add to that like people can check out if they want to see more of that.
Yes.
For me, it's one in the future.
Oh.
So I've never really like Prince of Persia has never been on my radar like at all. And hi, Stacey.
You beat me to this one.
And I'd never even been on my radar. And then I saw the like communication and the depth and the detail of the accessibility options. This is for the upcoming Prince of Persia game that was like recently in the Summer Games Fest announced. And like seeing the way that the team talked about it, that it was like from day one, that it was, and I was like, I'm in. As I've never played a Prince, I don't know anything about this.
Yeah.
But I'm ready. Let's go. Like that beautiful feeling.
Couldn't agree more there. Both the fact that I think it was within 12 hours of that game being announced, we knew roughly what all the accessibility settings were going to look like in terms of broad categories. But also, as someone with aphantasia, the ability to pin screenshots on the map in a essentially Metroidvania type game is so useful for me as someone who can't visually remember things properly and then recall them on command. I have been so desperate for features like this to become more prominent. So that is one in particular. Also, in terms of upcoming indie stuff, I'm really excited for Stories of Blossom, which is a accessible point-and-click adventure that is designed with a few different disabilities in mind, but specifically has been worked on by sightless blind accessibility consultants. I know Sightless Combat's been working on it to make sure that the audio description support is really, really robust. I'm really excited for how much of an effort they've made to making sure that from day one this game is going to be playable for sightless players, and it's really nice to see.
I'm really glad that you guys brought up Prince of Persia because that means I don't have to feel weird bringing it up. But yeah, that's really, really exciting that the community responded so well to having that information available. We've got an amazing PR team at Ubisoft who really understand accessibility and really care about it. And I think that was the earliest that Ubisoft have ever put out information. I think like a full 6 months ahead of release. We try and publish those accessibility spotlights as soon as we can. Sometimes there are different factors that stop us from doing that, but the Prince of Persia one was like 6 months ahead of time, and it's really crucial for disabled players to be part of the hype at those big moments too, rather than seeing a trailer and being like, oh, that looks cool. Can I play it? I don't know.
Not to self-plug myself. This is why I tried to put together the Accessibility Summer Showcase this year, is because up until this year, I'd never seen a developer actually do that during Summer Games Fest. Go, this game that we've just announced that you want to get excited about, you know right away whether you can get excited or whether you're going to get disappointed later. And I'm so glad that like this game was a really good example of why that is such a cool thing to do.
Yeah. And I think it's also a good opportunity to like have the people that are making the game to actually share some of that info and give a little bit more context around like not just what features the game will have, but also like how that will impact the game and how that will kind of work, because sometimes it can be a little bit tricky. If you were just presented with a list of options or a list of tags to kind of really get an understanding for how that will go down. But yeah, I'm trying to think about games that I am particularly excited for. I don't know.
I have some, like I did the demo after Wholesome Games that played a lot of
Yes.
demos, did accessibility reviews of them, and I have some I want to like shout out for that. A game called Little Nemo. Oh my god. Oh my god, like that is on par with like God of War in the way of they have thought about it. They have thought about every single little thing. That one, and I talked about it, and I gave some like, this is what I wish you can do if you want to pull it even further. This is what I would add. And the developer answered me on Discord, which is like, this is so cool. Can you write it like out a bit more, and I will see what we can do. The same did Botany Manor, Venba,
Yes.
Little Kitty, Big City, and Wooden Weather. All of those developers contacted me afterwards or commented. Also, Bubblegum Galaxy, all of them contacted me, said, thank you so much for this. These are things we are going to look at. They can't promise they would do it, but they were just like, okay, we have now a way where to go. A lot of these are really few people working on it. They didn't know, and they asked me some question, where can we go and learn more about this? I sent them away some like materials, and they were just like, this is so cool. We're going to like let you know when we have tried to implement it. You can test it again and see if you like it better then. And I was just like, this is so cool.
I can't talk about a lot of specifics, but it's so nice when, like, you know, you put out your thoughts about a game and go, these are the things I thought went well, these are the things I struggled with, and a developer reaches out to you and goes, we paid attention to what you said, we can't make any promises, but we'd love to have a conversation.
Yes.
Here's what we can address, here's what we have questions about addressing. And being proactive about, like, starting that dialogue it makes such a big difference.
It does. And I think it is. So we give a lot of praise to the big companies, but we should also give praise to the small companies. And also, I was on another talk with Stacy, and Stacy said something really, really smart that time.
Did I?
Yes, you did. I have remembered. You talked about how, because I said like small indie developer studios are so easy to change. They can like jump and just do a 360 on like a coin. But we have to remember that big companies are like monsters, or they are like big like houses or buildings. It takes time for them to move. But when they first move, they have power behind them. And that is how we need to start. I think we need to start thinking about it as a powerhouse that is slow to change, but when they do, it's a ripple effect through the whole community versus small changes that can help a lot of people in a quick succession of time.
And on that note, quickly, I think a lot of people don't realize how long big AAA games take to make at this point. Like, often we're looking 3 to 5, maybe more years from a game starting development to really happening. And I see a lot of people who are like, oh, this feature I saw in a game last year, I'd really love big AAA game to have it. And it's like, I guarantee those things are in the pipeline, but they sometimes take a while to get moving. But it is wonderful seeing all the stuff the indie space is doing to just jump on these things as they come up.
I just want to add to what Aravia was saying about providing feedback. I think sometimes it can feel you can feel like a bit of a small fish in a big pond sharing that kind of feedback, but it's so valuable to developers to have that feedback, because they might not know. You know, they might just not have had that experience or have spoken to anyone with that experience, because disability is so broad that, you know, even if they have tested with disabled users, they haven't tested with you. They haven't spoken to you. So it does really, really make a big difference. And I understand that it's still very important to hold companies accountable. I don't want people to think, oh, well, you know, Ubisoft or Microsoft is a big company and things take a long time to change. It's definitely important to hold people accountable, but also to remember that with AAA game development, development can often take 5 years, maybe more, and there are so many processes and so many people that decisions have to go through that it can be really, really slow. And I know that it can be frustrating as a disabled person to kind of wonder why certain companies might not be doing the things that you want, or why you feel like they're lagging behind, but there are definitely game accessibility advocates at every company, at every studio, and whether you know about it or not, there are people working behind the scenes to try and do as much as they possibly can. And I think also it's important to remember that making games, we have a certain amount of budget, we have a certain amount of time, and we have a certain amount of people. So you know, sometimes things might not happen the way that we all want them to, but there are people who are working very hard behind the scenes to try their best and to make the best decisions for you. But yeah, still hold us accountable, still tell us what you think. It does make a difference.
Very quickly jumping back to that original question of games we're excited about, one that's already come out, but that just I really keep nodding to every time I get a chance. I'm so happy with Street Fighter 6's new modern control scheme. As someone who struggles with memory and coordination, combo string heavy fighting games, I love the idea, just could not do them. Making it so that it's one button and a directional input, and that is how all characters control, has made such a difference to my ability to play that genre. And it's so nice to see a genre that has been like gradually getting more and more complicated, more and more insular, more and more focused on the top of the top players, going, let's take a step back and bring more people in. And I super appreciate that, and that it isn't sectioned off away from classic controls. So good.
Yeah. Before we unless anyone had anything to add, before we go to a break for a little bit, I wanted to just read out like the suggestions that were in chat for games, which was like Celeste, which I've never played, Coral Island, which I've heard of, but I can imagine the logo in my head, but I can't remember what the game is. Then there's like Botany Manor, Final Fantasy 16 told us about their accessibility options, which was nice, but they decided to implement it was really bad. Okay, well, A for effort on their part, I guess.
I'm really not going to give them A for effort on that one.
I don't play Final Fantasy, but I didn't hear anything about their accessibility options. Were they really bad?
I'll tell you this much. There was an interview in which the developer of the game announced that accessibility would be handled by some equipable rings, which would take up equipment slots that you couldn't use for other kinds of equipment. And his reasoning for that was, the producer's reasoning was, I feel really insulted when a game offers me an easy mode, and I think people should get good so that they stop needing to use the accessibility rings. So we made them take up slots so that like eventually you're going to have to get rid of them. And that really put a damper on things. Like you can't equip all of the accessibility rings at once. There's 5 of them and only 3 slots. It's really kind of antagonistic accessibility support. It's technically there, but it doesn't want you using it, and that sucks.
I think it's a really interesting approach, right? Because it means that instead of an option, you've got something that's kind of like in the game that you can use. But yeah, by limiting players to how many they can use, then you're making players have to kind of pick and choose their most important accessibility concerns, and there might be more that they need. I know that Nier Automata did something very similar. It's not a game I've played, but they had similar chips, I think, that you could equip, but it was unlimited.
So
as far as I can remember,
there was a limit to the chips in Nier Automata, but the big difference was you had like a very large amount of space to play with, and every accessibility setting was only a single point. It was the smallest cost item you could have. So if you had, let's say, like 100 points worth to spend, accessibility options were like cost 1 point. It barely does anything. As opposed to this, where it's like, oh yeah, if you are going up against a poison boss and you want to equip a poison resisting ring, you're going to have to go do what accessibility setting do I turn off to be able to resist poison from this boss, which is not ideal implementation.
With that, before we go on to the next question, we will take a break and everyone can stretch, take painkillers, grab water, piss, whatever you fancy. Yeah. But before we do, I want to thank sponsors again. Thank you so much to Elgato and Splash Damage for if there is anything.
I think we're all going to have at least 3. So
okay, good. I was like, is 3 too many?
I can start by saying the thing that nobody wants you to say, but I'm still going to say it, and that is easy mode. I know there is always like this big discussion in the community, outside the community, in every Elden Ring and Dark Souls space. Is easy mode accessibility? For me, it is. For me, it is when I have bad pain. the fact that I have a preset that makes the game easier makes that I can play it, but it needs to be easy mode that I can turn on and off.
Yeah.
Because if I played Yakuza game, I think it was. I might be wrong, and I could turn like a bit on and off. Maybe it was another game. Who cares? And could turn it on and off, because I have to say, if I have a really good time, like, and my joints are doing really well, I want to have a challenge. So I want to turn it up when I have a good time, but I still want to play the game when I'm having a bad time. So I need to have easy mode that I can turn on and off. And recently started playing with my feet. So I use the Xbox adaptive controller. So most of that is used. Yeah.
I was gonna be like team feet, and then I was like, oh, that's a bit
weird. So I have, for the first time in my life, I have 100% with Crash Bandicoot 3, and I was just like, yeah, I did it. So that it's really important for me, but that often is fixed with the Xbox own app. So like the game believes it's one controller, so that is okay, but it will make it easier if they have them button remapping. And then I have like a journal system of some kind. I forget things, I have memory problems, and I need to look things up. I am okay with using the wiki, but I would prefer things being in game. And that also is that if it is a story heavy game, which I love, like, give me the ability to go back and read a transcription of what's happened. Because if I have a bad week, and I stream only once a week, and if I go a week, then like if I have a lot of pain takes up space where my memories should be stored. I will not remember. And to be frank, if games doesn't have it, it's not that I won't buy it, it's that I won't continue playing it. And it's just so, easy mode, ability to play with my feet, aka button remapping, and a journal system of some kind, a good one. Then I'm happy.
I want to just, off of that, I think a good thing to note is that although I think a lot of people think, oh, accessibility features are just for disabled people, but they're not, because like stuff like journals or transcripts just help people that are possibly abled, but just like, oh, I haven't played this game in a year, I want to continue, but I have no idea what happened a year ago. And so accessibility features don't always just apply to disabled people, they can help everybody. Because same as you, like my memory is just terrible, like even my short-term memory, I will be playing a game or my attention span is terrible, so if there's this big long load of dialogue, there is a high chance that I will not read or listen to any of it, and I will just click through the whole thing, and then I'm like, I wonder what I have to do now in the game. So like stuff like transcripts helps, because I can just go back, I can skim it and be like, oh, I meant to go to this place and talk to this guy, that's what's going on.
I'll jump in with a few. One that I really appreciate is proper frequency of saving, and ideally quick saves that can be done anywhere without losing progress. I really enjoy playing like challenging platformers, but I have real inconsistency with my coordination. And if I manage to get past a really tricky bit of a game, I want to be able to save my progress and know that I'm not going to fail the next jump and have to go right back and do that thing that took me like 2 hours to manage. I want to know that if I have a moment where my hands do what I tell them and I can make progress, that's not going to get rolled back. And like quick save really helps for that. On top of that, one that you don't see very often, but that I really appreciate when it comes up, is games that have tried to incorporate accessibility settings designed to help autistic players. It's slowly becoming a little bit more of a thing, but we could look at, say, like Life is Strange True Colors, that had sensory, like if there are going to be big flashes of light, big spikes in audio intensity, here is a warning so that you can like prepare yourself for that, or look away from the screen, or change your settings. There was things like, this was entirely unintentional, but Marvel's Avengers having a scene that was non-verbal interaction between two characters, and it's subtitled the non-verbal subtext of what was going on in that scene and what they meant. Things like this, I super appreciate, and I really hope we see more of going forward. And lastly, I really appreciate high contrast mode. As someone who doesn't have any vision weakness, I really struggle with focus and with paying attention to things in scenery. I have pretty bad ADHD, and my brain just wants to like run for the next thing that I feel like I need to run for. High contrast mode and the ability to just highlight, is there anything yellow that's interactable that I haven't picked up or gone and seen what it is, that I like my brain is just like not registering that it's there? Being able to just go, this is what's in the scene, you've missed some things, that's okay,
Yeah.
is so important for me, like not missing important content in games, because my brain's just like, go, go, go.
I think that's a really important point that you made about high contrast mode being beneficial for players other than players that might have low vision, for example. There are so many areas of accessibility where our needs overlap, and I think especially things like subtitles, right? We think that maybe only a very small percentage of players will need them because maybe this number of players are deaf or hard of hearing, but actually the data shows that so many more players use subtitles than you might expect. I think the data is somewhere around 95% of players.
So I was looking at this the other day, and it is Ubisoft data, I believe 95% of players leave subtitles on if they're on by default.
Yes.
If they're off by default, 75% of people still go and turn them on.
Yeah.
That is, like, there's a lot of accessibility settings that I can't talk about figures for other ones, but that more people than you would think use accessibility settings, because even if it's not who they were designed for, they find them useful.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it kind of going back to what Molly said about accessibility options helping players that are not disabled, it kind of goes to explain the point that all options can be accessibility options. So it's kind of quite difficult to say what's an accessibility option and what's just an option. But yeah, personally for me, a lot of my issues that I have with games, or at least the issues that can make me the most sick, is anything related to motion sickness and migraines. They can quite often knock me out for like 8 hours. And I think people think that I'm exaggerating when I say that, but I played Doom Eternal on stream, threw up, and had a migraine that lasted 8 hours, and I literally just had to I had to lay down in the dark and listen to audiobooks for a really long time.
As someone that before this stream started was talking about my new motion sickness in the car glasses that I tried today for the first time, I couldn't agree with you more. Motion sickness is such a big deal that like people don't realize how debilitating it is to be like, oh no, I just feel like I'm gonna vomit for the next like multiple hours because this game did something bad.
Yeah, exactly. So some of the options that I tend to look for are things related to motion blur, anything related to screen shake. That can be a really, really big migraine trigger for me. But it also depends on like the actual camera motion itself. So sometimes it can be quite difficult to actually assess whether I can play a game or not just from looking at the options. I usually need to look at the gameplay to get a better idea. And kind of just put myself in an uncomfortable situation by watching gameplay and be like, oh, nope, that made me feel sick. I will not buy that game. So yeah, it can be things like any options related to camera. There's an example that I talk about all the time, which was I love Resident Evil, and I couldn't play Resident Evil 7 because it moved. It was a first-person game. I was in love with the 2 and 3 remakes, which were third-person. Tried to play 7. I was sick. I tried multiple times, threw up so many times. I kept putting myself in that situation. But with Resident Evil Village, they had some camera acceleration options that made the arc of the motion a lot smoother, and I was able to play it, and I was so stoked.
Can I note a quick frustration on that front?
Yeah.
Resident Evil Village has a third-person mode, but it was not part of that game's accessibility update, despite in one of their videos announcing features, they acknowledged it's helpful for motion sick players. It was bundled in with paid story DLC. And that was really frustrating because, like, third-person support, like, fixes 99% of my problems. If I can play your first-person game in third person, I'm probably not going to get motion sick.
Yeah. Exactly.
It's so much more reliable than anything else you could do with your game.
Yeah, first person games with me are very much we'll
trial
see.
And error.
But I know that I continue to talk about Resident Evil, but to Arevia's point about needing reminders, my chronic pain fries my brain, and I need reminders for everything. One of my favorite things about the Resident Evil 4 remake that recently came out is that they have like a chapter recap. So on the loading screen, when I'm about to play, it's like, this is what happened. And I'm like,
Sorry.
good, thanks, I remember.
I on the sort of Resident Evil train, I struggled. I played Resident Evil 4, so I would be lying. But Resident Evil 7 was like the first. Was it 7 Village or was Village 8?
Village was 8.
8. So Resident Evil 8 was my first like proper Resident Evil game where I was like, oh my god, I'm so hyped for this. It's so exciting. But I had a similar issue where like it made me so motion sick, and like if anyone's here from like my streams, like regulars, I tried streaming it, and I literally every time I would play it, I would just be like, after like an hour, I'd be like, I have to just go, because I feel like I'm gonna throw up. And I turned off camera shake, I turned off motion blur, every option you possibly could, and it just, no matter what I did, but I'd already paid for the game now, so I was just
I was
quid in the hole.
I was gonna say, and I know that this is like that, it's not as easy as just asking for this, but I would so love if every first-person game just had, even if it's just 5 minutes long, a little demo in which I can walk around in first person and go, I know on paper what options you have, but is this going to make me motion sick? Just let me walk around for a second.
To be fair, the Resident Evil games do tend to have demos. I know Village did, and I know the that 4 remake did, and that's really, really helpful. Because not a lot of games have
demos anymore.
Published demos anymore these days. Yeah.
One thing. Sorry, Carlo. If you do yours, I was gonna add something irrelevant. So please do yours.
Oh, okay. It was not about Resident Evil, so I don't want to like.
No. Mine was completely irrelevant to what we were talking about.
This is the Resident Evil Fan Club now. So.
In terms of accessibility that I look for, I can't play a game unless it's got controller support. If it's got controller support, I might be able to play it. It doesn't mean that I absolutely can if it has controller support, but anything that doesn't have controller support is unfortunately not playable for me because I use the Xbox Adaptive Controller. If you haven't used it, a PC recognizes it like it would recognize a standard regular Xbox controller. So it's not like a special kind of compatibility. If the game can recognize an Xbox controller, it can recognize an Xbox Adaptive Controller. So controller support is a really big one for me. Game modes are like different difficulty levels is really big for me. I know you've said it already, Arovia, but I know that can be quite a controversial one. The best way that I've found to explain it is that if you imagine a game as a 100-meter race, that's what non-disabled people are running. They're running a 100-meter race. And for those of us who need accessibility options, we're starting 50 meters behind, sometimes 100 meters behind, sometimes 200 meters behind. So giving a so-called easy mode isn't giving us like less. So, okay, we're running 75 instead of everybody else running 100. It's the other way around. We now get a chance to run as close as possible to the same distance as everybody else. And there's so many, it's already been touched on, but like situational needs for accessibility options, like game difficulty. For example, if you're in a busy room, if you're in a shared house where there's loads of people keep going in front of the TV, or you can't have the sound on, so you need the subtitles, or you need like directional cues that don't come from audio, for example. Or if you have childcare and you might have to like immediately stop the game and pause because the kids need you. There's so many reasons why you would need loads and loads of accessibility options. And for a lot of people, they might just deem them as quality of life things. But when you add an accessibility option, like it's not just a win for the people who would use it for accessibility option, it's a win for everyone. And I think the best example that I know of this is when EA published the stats on Star Wars Jedi Survivor, and they published a long list. I've got it here, I can link it if anybody wants it, but they published a long list of all the stats from who had played the game and what they'd done, and they published the percentage of players playing on different difficulties, and it's 52.5% of people play on Jedi Knight, which is like the normal difficulty. 4% of people played on the most Jedi Grandmaster, on the most difficult of difficult, And on the easiest mode, story mode, it's 14.5% of people. And there's modes in between as well, like the mode between story mode and Jedi Knight, i.e. the easiest and the standard mode. There's 15% of people playing that too. So there's this absolutely huge group of people who are playing it. And I think it's really important that places are publishing that data. Thank you for the permit popped in chat. There's I think it's really important that data is published, because that supports what we already know, which is that actually these options are so useful for so many players. For me, having a story mode doesn't necessarily solve the issues. In a complete dream world, like the light shining down, hallelujah, here's the dream, there would be so many options that I would be able to toggle on and off that I wouldn't need these. And I feel like that would be a dream world, because all of the things that story mode makes easier, as it were, are a list of things. So what would be fantastic is if every player gets the opportunity to say, yeah, that's the bit I need, that's the bit I need, and to create this kind of tailored custom way that is their gameplay and what they need for their gameplay. So for me, I find quick time actions really difficult. My hands don't go that much, and it can really strain my knees if I'm doing it on my feet quite a lot. So the ability to be able to press one button instead of like mashing a button repeatedly. Yes, thank you, delightful, love to see it. And map points, like being able to set a point somewhere and then follow it. My community, some of humor in chat will say that I play the Colo way, which is basically the ADHD way except ginger. So I get lost. I will look at all of the flowers, and like, I have no shame in this. I love it. That's the way I enjoy games. I want to play the game. I want to get lost. I want to look at the orange flower. I want to go into the house that I'm not supposed to go to. I'm great at finding Easter eggs because I go all the places that I shouldn't be going. But then when I'm like, oh, I should really play this quest, I should really like do what this is, I'm like, oh no, I'm lost. Where am I going? What am I doing? And I don't want to ruin my joy of being able to go where I want to go and like let my brain experience the game and have fun with the game in that way, because that's part of the joy to me. But I do get really lost, and I'm most likely to put a game down and not come back to it if I can't figure out what I'm supposed to be doing next. And I know for a lot of people who haven't experienced this, you might be listening to it and be like, well, just pay attention. That's not how it works. No, that's not how it works.
Just don't be disabled. Just don't.
But yeah, there's so many reasons, and I understand that it might be hard to envision or hard to imagine if you haven't been through it or had someone close to you or watched somebody go through it, but it really is a huge barrier. And what really sucks is not knowing beforehand, in a very similar way to how I was talking about events and saying, if you have these accessibility options, even if you don't have them, like, just communicate it and communicate it with confidence. Yes, we do. No, we don't. Because then that helps be able to get excited or not be able to get excited. Prince of Persia, the wonderful, wonderful, wonderful example there. And I would also say, I've been talking a lot recently about Starfield. Now, this game, this is like my game to a T. Starfield is everything that I look for in a game. I have no idea if I can play it. Yeah. Now, I know that there's controller support, and I'm going, I'm gonna play it, I'm gonna play it, I'm gonna play it. And like, but there's definitely still this little bit in my mind that's like, you might not be able to. Like, you might not be able to. So I like really want to get hyped with my community. I really want to get hyped with my friends, and I am. But like, I will be really disappointed if there are barriers that aren't there. And I am gutted that hasn't been communicated in advance. And I would be less gutted if they communicate it and they would say, hey, like, all right, this is the limited options that we had. I'd much rather know now, so I can kind of think about it and plan and figure out what I'm going to do. Because the other option, quite frequently, as you were already saying with game demos, is you don't know until you start playing it. And on platforms like Steam, you can download a game, you can buy a game, you can download a game, you can try it. And if it's not accessible, you can refund it. It's one of the reasons why you can refund it. But on other platforms, you can't. On other platforms, you can't do that. And that's a huge barrier. And so I would also say giving advance notice of, here are the controls that you use, like a controller map. Oh, yeah, beautiful. A controller map. And then these are the most commonly used buttons would be beautiful. And even better, these are the ones that you have to hold down at the same time.
Mhm.
Because
Yeah.
I play
Yeah.
with my hands and I play with my feet, and I essentially play with L1, L2, R1, R2 on my feet with the equivalent of like start and select. And then I put whichever button's the most commonly used one. So if there's a button I have to spam, it's on my feet. So at the minute I have Y on my feet. I'm pressing it. I don't know if you can hear it. I'm pressing it right now. Yeah, so what would be great for me to know in advance, because the most frustrating thing for me is getting halfway through a game and then finding out that there is a central game mechanic that I've never encountered before that I have to progress past to be able to do it. And I've talked about this before, and people have said to me, hey, but Carlo, why can't you just get somebody else to do it? And I'm like, because then it's not my game. Like, it's not, that's not the point. That doesn't solve the problem. And it just makes you feel very excluded. So yeah, sorry, I've like gone on for 5 years, but
You're
But
fine.
that thing with like asking other people, like I like because just like a disabled rant TM here, but I am so like I need to ask people of favors so much in my life
Mhm.
all the time, and to be honest, can I just not? Can I
Yeah.
just have this for myself? Like it sometimes feels so embarrassing, and it shouldn't be, but I need to ask for stupid help for things. Like I just sometimes,
Yeah.
because of my cerebral palsy, just can't understand social things. Like it just
Yeah.
doesn't go into my head, and I need to call my mom, and I need to do like, okay, this is the event, this is what I've said, this is what the person said, I don't know how to react, tell me how to human. How am I supposed to react to like just socially be accepted by people? Do you think then I want to like, what after that, by the way, can you drive down 20 minutes for to jump over something for me? No, it's already so taxing living in a world that don't understand you. And it's like the same Cole said earlier with like people maybe not understanding. And I had somebody in my comment section once saying like, but I have seen people playing Dark Souls with like dance mats, and he was disabled. Why can't you do that? And it's equivalent to asking an able person, have you seen
Everyone's getting
people?
mad.
Yeah,
I've seen
some
people do the high jump. Why can't you?
Yeah, can you do that? Like I've seen people sprint like for like marathons. Why do you take a car to the store then? Humans can sprint. Why don't you sprint? It's this sort of the same thing. We are all have our abilities, and yeah, I just get so wild up.
No, I couldn't
agree.
agree more.
and
It's,
good days
you
and
know,
bad days as well.
Yeah,
Mm.
being in a situation where like, you know, I did a Twitch stream recently where I still don't know for certain. I think someone was being sarcastic, but I couldn't tell, and I just was like, I really just don't know what's going on here. So I just directly asked chat. I was like, person in chat, like, I'm really struggling with whether you're being sarcastic or not now. Like, I have a disability. Can you just tell me whether you're being sarcastic so that I know how to engage with this? And their response was to just like keep joking, and I was like,
No, I really don't.
like,
no.
yeah, I'm like, when you have to do things like that, where you have to go, I know that this is just a fun joke everyone's having, but like, I literally, my brain cannot work out what's happening here.
Yeah.
I don't like, if I have to deal with shit like that, I don't want to also have to get like, I want the game itself to be something that I can just get on with. Like, I don't want the game to be another source of I need to get help or acknowledge the fact that I struggle with stuff.
Yeah.
Also, what if you live alone? What am I meant to do? Like, call up my
Right.
friend and be like, "What day can you come and visit me?
Come and help me
Because I'm stuck
press
on
this
this
button."
game."
Yeah.
Yeah.
So weird.
I think
But
sorry, I didn't want to interrupt anyone.
go on.
This is why I think stuff like accessibility reviews like Olivia and Laura, like you do, are so important, because as we said, like not a lot of games have demos nowadays. Like they used to be a huge thing back in like the 2000s and 2010s. I don't know why they stopped. But it is why like accessibility reviews are so handy for like the disabled community, especially if like game companies are nice enough to give them out ahead of game release,
Yeah.
because then disabled people can watch it and be like, oh, can I play this game? And although sometimes you may not know until you are playing the game, it does help you to be like, can I remap like buttons? Can I turn off like QuickTime events or extend timers or anything like little things that you can just check to be like, oh yeah, I can play this.
Also, on that note, quickly, every game developer should be making use of PlayStation and Xbox's accessibility store tags feature, where people can, without having to go elsewhere on the console store, like see what features a game has accessibility wise as a checklist. Nintendo, you're the only one that doesn't offer that functionality, and you need to get on it. Like, I'm so glad that we're reaching that point at the very least, where more and more games you can just look at the point of purchase. What's a list of things I might need? Does it have them, yes or no?
Yeah.
And if you work in social media management or PR, understand that disabled people might need more time, because most of us can't work 100% job and doing a review. So if possible, give it a bit before. That is like a really, if it possible, I understand that is like a big ask, because there is a lot of things happening around, but when it is possible, try.
Yeah, I have on occasion had developers explicitly go, we're going to give you code earlier than other places because we know you have accessibility needs. It's going to come with a couple of caveats, so like overlook these things until this point, but so that we can give you, say, 3 weeks to be on top of this. I'm like, thank you so much.
Yeah, it is. I think also like you mentioned the Xbox and PlayStation like accessibility tags. I love that a few game companies now have also started doing like the full accessibility pages for games they make, where it just tells you like everything, what's in it, what you can change. Like not to shout out Rebellion, like I feel like I should be, anytime I get the chance to mention like Rebellion, I will, because they're just like the nicest people. But they have really good ones. Like they made Sniper Elite, and they've got like a page for each of their games where it just lists everything you can change, all the options. And that's really handy because say you are a PC gamer, there's no way to, like, Steam doesn't have stuff like that. So it's just really handy if you're playing on PC.
And I think it's, I talked about this on a TikTok the other day, and that's the thing of like, be proud. Be proud of what you have added, because a lot of the things is that you don't, accessibility is vast. No one can be 100% accessible. That is just go away from that. That is impossible. You can do really good, but a small things comes a long way. And I often say when I like do the public speaking on that, is that imagine your game being a product, and this is your intentional barriers. These are the intentional hinders you want your players to get over, is the puzzles or whatever. You're either going to choose to take away hinders you don't need with accessibility, or give people a shove up to get over those hinders with the accessibility. But there will always be hinders. Even though I like joke a lot about Dark Souls and Elden Ring and like Elden Bros being angry at me, because they are always in my comment section being angry at me.
Same.
That is still okay. Like 100%. If your game is, we're going to be hard. Okay, don't have easy mode. That is your vision for the game. But there's 1,000 other things you can add around that just like doesn't have anything to do with your difficulty. So you still have your bubble of, this is my idea. So if developers can start thinking about accessibility more like that, okay, but if I just add on these accessibility things, more people can see my idea. I can give my idea to more people. Then maybe that will crack a bit on how it is, because it isn't about changing the game. It's about letting your vision be shown to more people. And it's, so be proud. If you have text, write about it. Like all these simple things as well, just write about it on your Steam page. If you have like, my character will always have like a drop shadow so you can easily see them. Genius. Write about it. Be proud. I will most likely make a TikTok about it. So hey, everybody wins.
I think it sorry, you go.
You go.
Okay, I'll go. I think like we were talking about like the Final Fantasy guy earlier who was like basically just like accessibility, don't need it. And I think a big thing is that people at the like heads of game companies are never gonna care about disabled people. Like they just won't, like as far as like empathy goes, they will not.
Yeah.
But in terms of like business, it's been proven time and time again that like stuff like the more diverse your team is, the more diverse your marketing team is, the more like accessible you make your games makes you money. So I'm
Yeah.
like, it literally, like you said, be proud of it. Like it makes
We-
sense for you
we-
want to add these things.
We shouldn't have to talk about it this way, but the way I've taken to trying to talk about accessibility to people who don't think they need it or that sort of view it as a niche subject is ideally, first place, you should be thinking about it because of empathy. People other than you want to engage with the thing you love, and it would be great for more people to do the thing you love doing. If you can't care about it for that reason, care about it as if you're a developer for the financial reason. If you look at the percentages of people who are disabled, 20% roughly of working age adults in the UK have a disability under the legal definition of disability. And if you can't care about it for that, for like the numbers of that and what that means financially, care about it for the fact that disability increases over time. If you look at the UK, 45% of pension age adults have a disability. And if you're looking financially as a game developer or as someone who wants to play games, that is a number you should keep in mind. If you want to keep people who are playing video games today and buying them and loving them in that hobby long term, you need to recognize more and more of them are going to become disabled, and offering accessibility support keeps them in the hobby they love. If you are a player and you can't care about accessibility for, empathy for your fellow person, care about it out of self-serving, thinking for the future. Because in the UK, 45%, that is almost a coin flip whether you will be disabled by the time you're ready to collect a pension. If you still want to be gaming, then now is the time to be advocating for accessibility settings, even if you don't need them, because you might need them down the line.
Yeah.
And as I said, ideally, empathy for disabled people should be enough to get you on board, but there are reasons to go, this will down the line impact either finances or my ability to game. And if you need to be self-centered, the reasons exist.
Like
And that is like I just quick on that,
No, go.
because like the absolute favorite saying I know, it's you either die young or you live long enough to see yourself become disabled.
Yeah.
And that is not a threat, it's a promise. It's just sadly how it's morbid way of how we human. Like our eyesights go, our hearing go, our back go, everything goes. And in the end it just hurts, and welcome to my world.
Yeah. It is. I was actually talking to my boyfriend about this the other day, where I was saying like possibly like our generation and maybe the generation above us are like the first like real load of gamers that are going to grow old. And like for a lot of us, like gaming is our main hobby. So what, we're suddenly going to get to an age where we're like, oh, I don't like games anymore, I don't want to do it. And so if like you said, Laura, like if you want to keep customers long term for like the next decades, obviously yes, kids being born, but I mean, who's having kids nowadays anyway? So like if you want to keep customers long term, implementing accessibility options now, teaching people about those options, what they might need, what they could use, and like what your game includes, is great, because people reach like 60 and be like, oh, I'm old, what do I do now?
There are so many settings that I don't need that I'm excited every time I see them, because I'm like, look, I look at old people around me, I'm probably going to have worse coordinate. Like, I'm the least disabled I'm ever going to be. I'm only going to get more disabled over time. There's a good chance I'm going to need stuff for low vision, for low hearing, for my mobility deteriorating further. And I'm so happy at the people who today are normalizing that. Like, it's so good that, like, I do feel optimistic that by the time I need some of these settings, they will probably be pretty standardized, and that's great to think about.
Yep. I personally cannot wait to be a badass Diablo playing granny.
Yeah.
I'm stoked. I'm going to retire. I'm going to have way more time to play games.
Yeah.
I think the financial contribution of disabled people is much huger. It's now a word.
Yeah.
Larger. We'll go with
Yeah.
that one. It's much larger than I think people realize. Like, if you haven't heard of the Purple Pound is
Yeah.
about the spending power of disabled households. And there's a bunch of, I've got a link as well. If this is another one that you'd like to see. But the Purple Pound estimate that businesses lose approximately £2 billion a month by ignoring the needs of disabled people. And that 73% of disabled customers have experienced a barrier to the thing that they're about to use.
Yeah.
So there's a really huge thing. Oh, let me post it before it runs out. There is like absolutely massive, and Laura is right. Like, please care about us because it's
we're
a nice
people.
human thing to do.
You know?
But in terms of like profit, in terms of if you do have a brand or a company or management that is so very, very strongly profit focused, and that's the way that you might get their attention, like, let's hope that it's another way that you might get their attention about it. But if that's it, like, the stats are there, like the money is there. And there are so many disabled people, myself included, who experience quite a lot of isolation because there are so many barriers out in the real world. That a lot of the ways that I do use my money, that I do purchase things, is online, is digitally, is things like games. It is things like, it's gaming or something to do. For example, I have a Kindle because it's far more accessible to me than holding pages open. So a lot of the content that I'm consuming and a lot of the things that I'm spending are on things that are accessible for me to enjoy in my own place, and that translates quite extremely widely to games companies, extremely widely. So yeah, that's the way that if you're marketing to gamers in any way, that's absolutely a thing. But I firmly believe that it's not just about gamers, and that all folks who are marketing should be marketing with the understanding that there are disabled people in the population who will want to engage and want to be excited. Like, it's that same thing again, like, it's not a lecture. It's like, we want to be excited with you. Like, we want to share that joy, that gorgeous thing that you made. Like, hell yeah, we want to be there. You know, it's that same thing. So
It's a grand old meme that once somebody on Tumblr said on Twitter, "We're disabled, not werewolves." When somebody said that disabled parking should only be done with like a set amount of hours during the day. It's like, we're disabled. We are humans. And humans want to have fun. Like,
Yeah.
And the thing I think is also important, and we see this in Celeste. If you cater to the disabled community, oh my God, you get a community that love you. Like, they are just going to like onto you and never let you go.
And I mean, like, even with games that have like slightly mixed critical reception, like look at The Last of Us 2. People were iffy about how they felt about that game. The disabled community were out in force going, "This is amazing. We're so happy you're doing this."
Yes, and also a lot of times it's like a Sea of Thieves. Which also have like this almost, if I can use the word, like cult following. We are not being like, we're just like, yes, one of us, and just like we go like, and we tell each other, like we literally tell each other. Whenever I post about the game that has some accessibility, I get like comments and comments and comments. People go, "My sister's dog's grandma, best friend, neighbor is disabled. I'm going to tell her about this," because we are humans. We want to have fun and have a community. So
I think community is a big thing in the disabled community. There's no better way for me to word that. Like it is like I was at Develop conference this week in Brighton, which, if you're not from the UK, is just a game development conference in Brighton. And like it was like all the disabled people like flocked together and like basically just talked about like, "Oh, doesn't this shit about being disabled? Oh, this game has great options. Oh my God, this place is great for access and all that." And it is like especially I think within gaming, the disabled community just talks to each other so much via like Twitter and stuff like that, that if you do right by like the disabled community, everyone just loves you for it. Like it's great PR. If you don't care about us as human beings, like it looks really good for you to just be nice.
If you want a loyal group of people that will follow everything you put out, make sure you support disabled people, because we'll go like, oh yeah, no, you're one of like the 3 companies we can point to and go, we can pretty much rely on you. Customer for life.
Yes.
Yeah. Like I have never played Sea of Thieves, like ever. And every time they post, I retweet. I like it. I know some of the developer, like it always like congratulations then with things. Send it to my friends. Never played the game. No interest. It's not my kind of game. Love the game to bits. Like, we will make it seen.
That was me with The Last of Us when The Last of Us came out, and it was one of the accessibility things. I was like, this is not a game for me, but oh my yes,
yeah.
It is like we are loyal, so just like
even
if you like, well, don't hate us, that's ableist, but even if you do, please like just do things for us. It'll look really good for you, because it is that thing.
Yeah, like I'm just sorry, very quickly. Yeah, as I'm not exaggerating when I say there's maybe 3 major like big AAA studios that I can rely on to be generally hitting a bar of accessibility. If you as a studio make that effort to join that club, you have so little competition in terms of like companies that people can look at and go, even if you haven't told me your accessibility, I can be pretty sure it's going to hit a baseline.
Yeah.
And that's such a valuable thing to be able to count on.
Yeah. See Morgan in chat saying it's free real estate.
Yeah.
It is though. Like the bar is so low currently, and like I am completely of the view that I know not everybody's gonna care about me and my little disabled self. Like some people are just gonna hate me because I'm disabled or anything like that. And so I'm just like, even like the small wins are wins. Like if you are allowing us to play if you're making it, how do I word this? Like if
making
you're
it possible.
Making it possible for us to play your game, like it should just be a given. But again, you're not always going to care about us, so just like do it. It's great PR. It'll make you loads of money. Like we'll love you forever. Like just do it.
I don't think it's an exaggeration to say that if a big AAA studio today was to standardize across all of their future games, large subtitles with a background, speaker tags, large text in menus that can be made larger, colorblind filters, remappable controls, difficulty modes. If you standardized just that much across all of your future games, you'd probably be in the top 4 or 5 like major developers in this industry. Like it is such a minimal bar to cross to go like these groups of gamers can just rely on you having the bare minimum, and that's a thing you commit to and you do consistently enough that people can rely on it. You skyrocket up to the top of people's like list of accessible games, and it's depressing that low of a bar would do it.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's an exaggeration to say that low of a bar would get a lot of people to go, you're doing a good job.
But on that note though, pay us.
Yes.
Pay us. Like pay us to promote your stuff.
Yes.
Because like seriously, that is in the same way you pay any content creator to promote your stuff, pay us as well. And also understand, and this is something like if there are anybody doing like that, just know that often we might not have the biggest numbers, but the reach we have in our community and the loyal people we have in our community, it's so much higher than anybody else, because we are such a tight-knit community, and because things really like goes quick around like fire and wild bush, whatever that saying goes. There we go. So like pay us, let us be part of it, because we want to. Like that is just what we want to. We want to actually talk about it, and it is a big thumbs up. So yeah.
One last thing before we move on to our last question of the night. on that note, one of the things that I keep posting about for these streams is like the amount of impressions and like interactions the tweets about these streams got, like across, well, even across like TikTok and YouTube, and then like Twitter. It is incredible. And I think, and I tweeted, I think either today or yesterday, being like people do care. Like there are a lot of disabled people out there. There are a lot of people who want to see the disabled community do well. Like just bring us on to campaigns. Have us be part of your like PR campaigns and marketing campaigns. Hire us to do content for you. Hire us to consult on your games. Like there is a very big community of disabled gamers out there, and I think game companies think like it's such a small pool of people. But when, like, for instance, your disability means you are at home a lot, a big hobby is gaming. Like it just makes sense that we all get into games and play many hours of them. But as we are coming up for the end of 2 hours, I just want to do one last question, if that is okay with you guys.
Quick, Molly, I think you might have your volume. A chat saying your volume for the chat or for the stream is really low.
Me?
On you.
Oh, it has not changed. I haven't touched anything. Let me turn myself up. There we go. Hopefully that's better. I didn't touch anything, but I don't know. There we go. Is that better? Okay. I didn't touch nothing. So this one was not on me. This tech issue, not my issue. This is someone else.
They say much better.
Okay, perfect.
Sorry. I just wanted them to
No,
hear it.
thank you. I didn't see. So yes, if you have any resources that you like, your go-to resources for people that want to know more about accessibility or learn more about it, get into it as a career or anything like that, are there any resources you would recommend to starting out?
To not self-promote too much, I literally yesterday put up a video that's 10 minutes long where I link to, I think it's 30 or more disabled content creators or outlets that talk about accessibility in one place to go. Here is a really quick whistle-stop tour of various disabled creators you should be following, because there are so many voices out there talking from so many different perspectives. And I think the important thing about, getting into this is there are some things I could point to that are good all-round resources. Can I Play That does really good all-round coverage, for example. But there are so many voices out there, and it's really important to get a little bit of what a lot of different people are saying about accessibility. Disabled gamers are not a monolith, and there is no matter how fantastic they are, there is no one disabled content creator who can give you the full picture of what accessibility means. So not to self-promote myself, but go check out youtube.com/LauraKBuzz and look at the video recommending accessible content creators to check out.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think just following other content creators, disabled gamers, is so powerful because they'll be able to give you so much insight onto their experience and the way that they experience games. I have a long list of resources. I actually put together a master list for Molly. Maybe we can work on tweeting that and putting that out there somewhere. But yeah, as someone that kind of moved from content creation to over a few years moving into doing this full time, I think it's definitely important to learn about disability rights. If this is something that you want to get into, the history of disability rights, accessibility in tech in general is really important to learn. I read a lot of books about game design, about psychology, about inclusive design. There aren't that many books but just specific for game accessibility. So I read a lot of things surrounding it. I would also strongly recommend GAConf, the Game Accessibility Conference. All of their talks are available for free on YouTube. There are so many, so have a click through and see what ones interest you. I will also give a shout out to the Xbox Game Accessibility Fundamentals course that's online. That is also free, and is a really good intro to game accessibility if you want to learn more. And it's amazing. There's all these resources online. Again, Can I Play That? Game Accessibility Nexus is another one.
Of note for people looking for that, it's spelled A11Y.
That's true.
Yeah.
Forgot about that. And also anything written by Grant Stoner, who is a incredible an incredible accessibility journalist. He has an access design column on IGN and puts out a lot of stuff on other platforms too. I could talk about this all day, but I'm going to stop and give other people some space to recommend.
Very quick throw in as well. Look into accessibility focused creators and disabled people outside of video games as a space.
Yes.
Look more broadly. A lot of what you learn there will be applicable.
Yeah. If you are a developer, Game Accessibility Conference is a good start because they have a lot of the basic and also it's manageable because they are in short sessions to just like get a start a feel. If you want, if I can get like a permission in chat, I can share it there. But it's Game Accessibility Guidelines. They have it up in like easy, medium, hard sort of. That is not the words they use, but it, like on how it is to actually end up implementing things into games, which is really nice because say you then have a puzzle game, you can go in there, see what you get like examples for what other people have done, and then you can go, oh, okay, so I will need this and this and this, and then like it's sort of like a menu. So you go in there and like today I want to eat this, and then you try that in your game, and things that, like there is how you can add it afterwards as well, and it's like how you get a lot of examples of other games doing it well, so you can go and sneak and learn from them, because learn from each other. Like this isn't, of course, give credit where credit is due, but a lot of the things we talk about isn't something we came up with ourselves. It's things we have learned from each other for years. It is sayings, and there is a culture, and that you can learn and you can take and you can use it. You don't necessarily need to, like, if you see some games sometimes trying to like reinvent the wheel, no need to. Yeah. If something works really well, just go for it like that. You don't need to be fancy about it. Just do it. But in that one.
I'd say a lot of the things have already been said. +1, all that. Especially what Laura was saying about not one person is a monolith. Yeah. And also we all have such different perspectives, even within the exact same diagnosis. We all experience things really differently. Something that I always say when people come and ask me directly is like, I will happily tell you what I think, but also please remember that I'm not speaking on behalf of all people. Yeah. And also my voice specifically comes from somebody who is newly disabled within the last few years. And so having those perspectives from different people is so important, because there will be things that I just don't know yet. Like I just haven't experienced it yet because I'm still learning. And I think that's the thing. Like it is an ever learning journey, even for everybody as an individual. I'm going on a tangent here. I want to give a special shout out to Special Effect. Special Effect are an amazing charity. They are a UK-based charity, helping make technology more accessible, but specifically games. I'm an ambassador for them. They are just the best. I love them with my whole heart. They helped me set up my gaming controller, and they are changing people's lives, like for real, changing people's lives. That might sound like an over dramatization to some people, being like, oh, it's just a game, but it's not. It's a community. And being able to do things independently, that you, in a world where you might not be able to do things independently, is absolutely life-changing. They're fantastic. So please go and see them. They're wonderful. If you're a developer, you're interested in making your game more accessible, they have a free dev kit. I've got the link if you want me to post it. That is it's free. Go look at it, see it. It's great. Go and have a look, learn. Their YouTube is also fantastic in terms of if you are wondering how something is done, or like, does this piece of equipment work with this piece of equipment? Like, they're brilliant. And the US equivalent to Special Effect is Able Gamers, who are fantastic as well. And even if you are not in those two regions, the information that they both provide is very freely accessible. And they're fantastic. And I'm forever learning from both of them about things that I had never even considered before, which is fantastic. I think that's... Yeah. I'm sure there's more, but yeah, that's a remark.
Same.
I wanted to add on to because Stacey mentioned GA
Yeah.
GDC, like Games Developers Conference. Although they're not like accessibility focused, if you just go onto like their YouTube and search accessibility in the search bar, there's a bunch of talks on there that are all about accessibility as well. So if you
Yeah.
are like I'm a visual learner, so
Yeah.
watching videos really helps me. And before we go, would you all like to plug yourselves? If you want to say again where people can find you, what
Oh, no.
content you
Not
make,
again.
what job you do, all that kind of stuff. So Stacey, we'll start with you again.
If you want to follow me, I'm at Here Lies Stacey on most platforms, as if it's on my gravestone and I am dead. I'm an accessibility design specialist for Ubisoft Paris studio, but I work fully remote from the UK. And I'm spooky and sleepy.
I'm spooky and
Thanks
sleepy.
for having us, Molly.
Thank you. Arevia, what about you?
I am Arevia. I make bit-sized content in videos about accessibility that is easy, digestible, and you can find me everywhere under the name Arevia, which is really hard to spell, so I'm sorry about that. And I'm dyslexic, so I'm not going to try and spell it for you. It's just how it is. But somebody stole my name on TikTok, so there you find me under the name Arevia Gaming, because they were rude and stole my thing. But if you want to learn more about accessibility reviews, or just have questions, and like the most basic, I'm a gal. I'm going to answer that, and I'm going to give you either find somebody who knows, because I love working with other people, or I'm going to make it myself, and I'm going to answer it so everybody can learn. Yeah.
Before I ask anyone else, Arevia is doing a really cool project of like a video like basically every day throughout July for Disability Pride Month on TikTok and on Twitter as well. So you guys should check that out. And Laura, what about you? What do you make and where?
You can find me on the internet at Laura K Buzz. I do Twitch streams 3 nights a week, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, 10 p.m. UK, 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Pacific. I do a whole bunch of other content you can find at Laura K Buzz. Over on YouTube, I do a series of weekly, roughly 10-minute long videos about accessibility over at youtube.com/Laura K Buzz. They range from videos about specific individual disabilities and ways that we can be accessible, through to reviews of specific games, through to more general discussions of things like accessibility creators you should be following, or issues that the industry hasn't really found good answers to, and sort of talking through those sort of broader discussion topics. Laura K Buzz, wherever you find me on platforms, I'm on basically everything.
And Colo?
Hi, I'm Golo. I love plants. I love sci-fi. I play games, and I tell really terrible dad jokes. And I have a cat who hates me. Good going. I love her. She's very grumpy. She's not here because she's grumpy. It's very on brand for her. Hi, I'm Golo. You can find me everywhere on the internet under the name Hello, it's Golo, all one word. I primarily stream on Twitch, but you can also find me on YouTube if you fancy watching an extremely chaotic Skyrim or Mass Effect playthrough. It's there. It's on YouTube. Go and tell me how frustrated it was. I love simulation games. I have spent a lot of time doing community time, so I also talk a lot about accessibility. And I also don't know what else to say. Thanks for being here. So it's just so lovely to talk to you.
And I'm LittleMoTAC, like everywhere except for Twitter, where I have an underscore. Oh, and YouTube and TikTok, I'm LittleMoTAC Gaming. Because I have LittleMoTAC on those two as well, but they're just spam accounts. You can ignore those and pretend they don't exist. I'm not as cool as everybody else here. I just make content, and so I don't make smart things. I just play games and hope for the best. Except on YouTube, where I do like diversity and inclusion related videos. But other than that, Twitch is my main thing where I just play games. That's it. That's how I'm plugging myself. But what was that?
As you should be.
Thanks. And so I just want to thank everybody for being here. Thank you so much. I appreciate you all being here, and see you next week at some point. Thank you for being here. Goodbye.